Hi guys, welcome back to HMA Gallery. Today I'm going to be showing you how to draw and paint your very own little kitty cat with a fish in his mouth. So follow along with me, try your best, and let's have some fun together. Alright, so to start our kitty cat today, we're going to have to draw it out on our canvas. So the first thing we're going to do is make the head. So we want to leave room for the ears. So we're going to make a big head because we want to utilize our canvas. All right. Then we want to come up, put a big ear here, almost like a triangle. It's a little bit of a curve. Big ear over here. Here's our two ears. Then we're going to have our two eyes. Big ovals here, and then another oval over here. And then we're going to have our nose right here connecting in between and coming down to a point in the middle here. Okay, like that. Then we're going to start here at the top of our ear, curve this down to stop here on the top of the head, and do the opposite over here, just like that. Because as we start painting, this is going to make it look more 3D when the outside of the ear is black and the inside is pink. Now if you want, we can go ahead and add in our little circle here for our pupil. And then we're going to have his mouth curving out here and curving back around here. All right. Then we're going to have our body. So our body is going to start here, just below the circle. It's going to come all the way down, coming out a little wider. However wide or skinny you want your kitty cat will depend on how you make his body. I'm going to do mine like that. And then we're going to want a collar. So I'm going to have a curved line here for my collar. And two little lines here. Actually three. 1, 2, 3. This is going to be the hardware where we're going to have our little nameplate. Have a circle for that. There. And let's see, what else could I sketch out? We don't want to do too much detail because we're going to add paint, and that paint is what's going to be our opportunity to add all that detail. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to just kind of zigzag sketch out his belly, or I'm going to have it white. Have that going down. And then our fish that's in his mouth. Now we have to imagine that it's curved, so we're going to have it coming out of the top over here and then curve back around like this. So it's going to come down to a point, curve back up, and then it's going to come up closer to the mouth and then curve back down. It's going to have a little eyeball right here. And then we're going to have the tail coming out and flaring out and then connecting. So there's our fish in his mouth. And then of course, we can go back with our eraser and erase out all those lines inside of our fish that we don't need anymore. Okay? Just like that. And there's our kitty cat. Now let's have some fun and add paint. All right, so to start out with painting our little kitty cat here, we are going to be using black. So I want my cat to be a black and white cat. So I'm going to start with the black, and I'm using a medium flat brush, and I'm going to start at the top here. Just carefully paint to the edge of his ear. Bring it down. I'm going to come over to that edge where the white fur is going to start. I'm going to carefully paint around the eyeball, around the little mouth, and all the way down to where that fish is. I'm going to paint back up. Now, I'm leaving the ear so that I can paint it pink, and I'm leaving these little jagged pieces here that are going to be fur. We have to do that after we do the pink ear. Otherwise, we're going to cover it up anyway when we add in the pink. So now I'm going to come back over here to this side. Do the same thing I just did on the left ear. Over here on the right. Try to carefully avoid that eyeball. Pulling down close to that detail. Oops, I got a little in the eyeball. That's okay though. With acrylic paint, the great thing is if you mess up, you can paint over it after it dries. So now I'm coming all the way down to my fish here, avoiding the jowls and that eyeball again, like that. Okay, so like I said, I accidentally got a little bit up here in the eyeball and it's not gonna fully come out, so I'm gonna let it dry and then I will go back later and paint over it. So now I'm gonna come up here underneath my fish and carefully paint that black all the way down to the collar. Now, if you're finding that this brush is too big for you and you're having a hard time, just use a smaller brush. You can always use a small flat brush. That will work too. You just want to make sure that it is a flat brush, whatever brush you're working with. We're not doing a rounded tip right now, just a flat brush. So now I'm going to come down here. I'm going to paint this side all the way down. Like so. And then I'm going to do the other side. Once again, we're going to add more detail after our black dries. You want to get the darkest color in first so that we can do our lighter colors on top. Just like that. Okay. There we go. And I am going to let this black dry and then we can come back and add a lot more colors. All right, so the next step that we're gonna do, since we're working with the black, I want to go ahead and paint the blacks in the eyes. So we're gonna start up here and we're gonna use a small round brush now to paint in the blacks of these eyes. Now right now it may not look like much, it may just look like a lot of black, but don't worry. We are going to come back and fill things in and add a lot more detail. But just to get started, I want to go ahead and get all these dark areas. So here's the brush I'm using. It is a small rounded brush. And it's just good for detail. And there we go. So the next color that we're going to be using is going to be for our little nose and our ears. This color is going to be light magenta. And I'm going to take this light magenta and I'm going to mix it with some white. That way we have a really pretty light pink color. So I'm going to mix about 50% magenta with 50% white. Once again, using my small rounded brush, and we'll see what color we get. Okay. So it's still kind of a really bright pink, and I want it to be a little bit lighter than that. So I'm going to add a little bit more white to the mix there. Now, your pink doesn't have to be the same exact color pink as mine. If you like your nose brighter, then you can do less white and more pink. If you like it lighter, then you do more white and less pink. So I think this is the color that I'm going to settle on right here. So I'm going to take and load my brush with some of that pink. Using my small brush, I'm going to carefully come back and paint in that pink nose, just like this. All right, there we go. And then I want to add it up here in the ears. If your black is still a little bit wet, try not to bump it, because when we come back in with more detail, we can always cover up that edge if you don't quite go all the way out to the edge. All right, so I got my pink ear. I need my other pink ear over here. All right. Now before this dries, I want to go back and add in some highlights into my ears. So I'm going to take some of that white, and it's got a little bit of pink. I'll come back and add a little bit in here, nice and light, like that. Maybe some down here on the edge here. Okay, we want it to blend just a little bit, so I'm working this in while the pink is still wet. So I'm going to take some more, come over here on this side and do the same thing with this side. So now I'm going to add some here, the tip of my nose. And then some darker pink down here. So what this does is gives it some depth. All right, so the next thing we want to work on is going to be the eyes, and I want to make my own green. So I'm going to use a tiny bit of sap green. We have sap green here. And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of white. And see what color I can come up with here. Yep. So I'm going to come in here and paint around that black and add in some green. Just like that. Okay. So here's my first eye. I'm going to do my second eye. So the next thing that we're going to work on, now that everything has been drying for a few minutes, is going to be our fish. So our fish, I want to make a nice gray color, so I'm just going to mix a little bit of my white with a tiny bit of my black. Now notice how I'm pulling from both colors. I'm not going right into the middle, or I'm going to contaminate all that black. And I'm not going to dip right into the middle of the white, or I'll contaminate all the white. And then that's how you end up wasting paint and wasting money on your supplies. So you pull a little bit from each edge and you make the color that you want. So I'm going to make myself this gray, and I'm going to come back here, starting at the base of the tail. I'm just going to paint myself this little fish all white, or not white, excuse me, all gray. Now he's not going to stay gray. We are going to add in highlights of white. Carefully avoiding the mouth, carefully avoiding the chin. Now remember, if you do mess up, this is acrylic paint, and you can just wait till it dries and paint right back over it. I think I'm pretty happy with that. All right. So now I'm going to wipe my brush off a little bit on a paper towel, and I'm going to come back and get a little bit more white and carefully highlight the top of that fish while it's still wet. If you do these highlights while the paint is wet, it gives you the opportunity to blend. It gives you a much easier blend. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of white here and let it blend into my gray. So I have a lighter gray on the top of my fish, just like this. Okay, I'm going to do that on the back of the tail as well. Come back through. Get it up to the edge of the mouth, just like that. Okay. And then if you want the bottom to be darker, which in my case I don't, you could always add more gray to the bottom, some darker gray. But for me, I'm going to keep adding some light colors because I still don't have it quite as light as I want it. There, that's finally starting to look lighter. Same on the back of my tail. Now you can work on this fish until you get it looking however you want it to look. All right. So I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. All right, for the next part, we're going to be working on the collar. I'm going to be using my crimson red here. You can make the collar whatever color you want, but I think I really want a bright red collar, so that's exactly what I'm going to use. So I'm going to come here, load my brush with some of this red, and then I'm going to carefully paint it in here. Okay, so there is my red collar. All right, the next thing that I'm going to be working on is going to be my eyes. I want to add in some little glare marks, so I just loaded the tip of my brush with some white. I'm going to come over here, one stroke here, and one little dot down here. Then I'm going to do the other eye. I'm going to do one stroke here, and then one little dot right here, just like that. All right, and now I want to add in a little bit of hardware here on the collar where it connects to the name tag. So I'm going to use some light gray for this. I'm going to come in with some of that gray, the same gray that I used for my fish. That way I don't have to make any new gray. I just reuse the colors I already have. I'm going to carefully paint this little rectangle in. We'll add all the detail lines later, but for now, just getting the colors. There we go. I like that. Okay, so remember how we had to wait for this to dry before adding in some of the detail on the ears? Well, now that it's dry, I'm going to use my small pointed brush and come over here, and I'm going to get some paint, and I'm just going to carefully paint in some of these little pointy pieces of hair. Add in however many you want, and I think I'm good with that. Okay, and now we're going to do the other ear. So load my brush again, and then angling downward, and I have angles going down to the right. The other side we went over to the left. This side we're going to go over to the right. There we go. All the way down. Just like that. Okay. So the next step we're going to do is going to be adding in the white. All of that white fur everywhere that we left, we can go ahead and start filling in. So just to try to make sure I get the detail, I'm going to be using my small, not the tiny brush, but the small rounded brush. Come back up here, all the way to the top, and just fill in all of that white. Now, if some of your black still shows through, it might need 2 coats of paint, and we can always do that. So I'm going to come back here, and while that dries, I'm going to add in my little mouth, my little jowls, just like this. All the way around. Make sure we smooth it out so there's no bumps of paint. Don't ever want to leave bumps of paint. If you have a glob of paint, you really need to try to smooth it out. You don't want to leave globs of paint anywhere on our canvas. Okay. Here. All right, so there's all of our white. So what we're going to do now is come back and add a few super pale gray shadowing. So right through here, we're going to add a little bit of that gray shadowing, just a tiny bit. We want it very, very, very pale. You don't want it to be dingy. We just want it to add a little tiny bit of a shadow. Here on this side. Notice how it easily blends in with the white because we're doing it while it's still wet. While that white paint is still wet, it's a lot easier to go in there and get those highlights and lowlights without overpowering any particular area. If you have a spot that it appears a little too dark, you can always go back and lighten it up with more white. Kind of like it darker on the top there. So I'm going to leave mine just like that. Okay. And maybe down here, we need some more color here. All right. Little more gray here on this side, definitely underneath that collar and around the name tag. There we go. And have it just nicely fade into that white in the center. Okay, I need to add a little bit more color underneath. Make that gray a little bit darker. I can always do that. Almost like it's giving a shadow underneath that collar. Okay, like that. Here we want to do the same. Come down a little ways. Just like that. Okay. So one of the details that we can go back and work on now is going to be the fur along the edges of the black. So if we want, we can come back in with some little sharp edges here for the fur. that over here too. Just a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot. Okay. So it just gives it a little bit of an illusion of being a little fluffy. Because after all, it is a kitty cat. I want it to be fluffy. So I'm using my very tiny brush in order to do this. Okay. All right. And then I want to do it down here. We're going to add a little more of a zigzag here, kind of like we did on the ears. Then for our eyes, we want to come back, for this eye, we want to come back and use just white on the outline. Just like this. There we go. Then we can let that dry and come back and pull in some of the black for the pupil. Now the other thing we can do is use a very tiny brush, very tiny brush, and then get some of this super dark gray that I'm going to make with just a little more of the black mixed in with the gray. And then I'm going to make a gill right here for my fish. I think it needs more black. So there is my fish gill. There we go. And then we can pull back through more details wherever we want them. So the next thing we're going to do is going to be our background. I'm going to use my medium flat brush, and I'm going to dip it in my water first, just to kind of loosen up those bristles. Dry it off on the paper towel, and then I want to use light purple because that's my favorite color is purple, but you can use whatever background color you want. So I'm going to carefully outline up close to my kitty cat. Try really hard not to go over your kitty cat, because even though we can paint back over with acrylic, it's a lot of work once we've already done most of the cat. I'm going to come back through and add my purple. Get it up close again, right? And we're going to do this all the way around. All right, so now that we have our whole background painted purple, and I also painted the sides of my canvas as well, I'm going to do this little nameplate in here. So I want it to be kind of like a little gold nameplate, maybe a copper or some type of a metal. And I love this color. This is deep yellow. It's just got a little bit more of a golden tone to it than some of the other yellows. And then I'm going to get a little tiny dab of white. So I have my deep yellow and my white. And I'm going to take that, and I'm going to take my small round brush, and I'm going to mix just a little bit like this. Not taking the whole thing, just mixing a little bit here. So a little bit of white into that deep yellow. I'm going to come back and I'm going to carefully paint my circle. Just like this. Okay. Then I'm going to come back and add a little more deep yellow here on the edge. And then I'm going to wipe that off a little bit and grab some of the white and make a little bit of a glare mark on that nameplate since it's metal, like that. Kind of have it blend in there, like that. All right, and there's our little nameplate. And now to finish up our kitty cat, we use a black marker and we outline everything. And there you have it, our completed little kitty cat with a fish in his mouth and a pretty red collar. I added a few more details here and there, like I put some little glare marks here on the metal of the nameplate, and I put a couple more little white marks here and some more white highlights here, and just little details that I wanted to add to mine, but you don't have to add it to yours if you don't want to. It'll still look really good when you get done with it. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. God bless.